Oh, I got the tweet notification.
Okay, so we're streaming now. We're about to start the Gilmore Gang. Places everyone.
Okay, remember.
Yeah,
Okay, that's the
that
rhythm.
whole stretch thing just is like, I'm not really ever sure what that means.
It means don't talk so fast. Mute is off, etc. Thank you.
Okay, Steve. Mute is off. And we're going to go.
Okay, hold on a second. Who did that?
Me. I got rid of it. Don't worry about it.
All right, let's start again, please.
Mute is off.
Sorry.
And we're going to go in 3, 2, 1, and.
Hi, Steve Gilmore here. This is the Gilmore Gang. We're coming to you from, deep in the heart of the pandemic. And the news is, good in this country for the most part, not so good in the rest of the world. At the end of the show, and also on the streaming Telegram feed, we're going to supply a link to something that one of our or several of our Salesforce colleagues are doing to try and help out in India. And there's a need for some volunteering this weekend. And so I'm going to push that to anybody who is within the sound of our voice. Joining us from New York is Frank Radis. Welcome, Frank.
Hi, Steve. Hello, gangsters. It's great to be here in the Big Apple. Being on this side of the pond for a little bit.
And not to get this started, but in general, if everybody could sort of kick in something that's top of mind or of interest to you that we may or may not talk about on the show. So what would that be for you, Frank?
Oh, it would be the crucifixion of Liz Cheney.
Okay, excellent.
That's the one that's
not excellent, but yes, we have lots to talk about there.
Yeah.
From Palo Alto, it's Keith Tier. Welcome, Keith.
Pleasure to be here on this beautiful sunny Friday, May the 7th, actually, Steve.
Oh, well, thank you for that.
So, well, there's a lot. It's been a big week. The Facebook oversight panel caught my attention for various reasons, and just a whole bunch of further evidence in the world of crypto that it is becoming mainstream, like Goldman Sachs starting to do trading desk stuff.
Okay, so now you're filibustering here.
Those are the two things.
Oh, two.
Yeah, I would add the Facebook thing to my list if not, because now obviously we're going to two. We're going to two
everywhere. Yeah.
Two. So
buy one, get one free, evidently.
BOGO.
Okay. And just a warning or a point to you, Keith. I'm going to be interested not just in the cheerleading that you're going to do, but also what your perspective is on the downsides of what you see is happening. And, what are the potential blockers of crypto, for example? So get ready for that. There will be a test.
It's not natural to me to become a pessimist.
I understand, but that's the job, and you signed up for it. Okay.
I think there's one good answer, Keith. I can help you out with that. If
Frank, it's just cannot wait to get started. So but we're going to keep introducing people here because there's a whole bunch of them on the screen here. So one of them is in Massachusetts is Dennis Pombriant. Welcome, Dennis.
Hey, Steve. Hi, everybody. I have one real bone to pick with AT&T Wireless. They're a bunch of dirty, rotten scalawags, and I hope we can talk about that.
Excellent. And well timed for the lower third, by the way. In Seattle, Washington, or nearby, is Michael Markman. Welcome, Michael.
Howdy do. I have one thing, which is it's just another side of the thing that Frank raised, and a thing that I think Keith raised. Facebook and Liz Cheney are just two aspects of the battle between the Trump world and the free world.
In
There are other
reality,
aspects of that to talk about.
Yeah.
Reality, as Dennis mentions, right?
Michael's chosen a very controversial opening statement there.
And I'm not giving him any counter, orders either.
Well, no, I find it interesting that there was like a 2-2, and then
Hey,
all of a sudden we got a 1 that's a 4.
Paging Frank Radis, there's a call for you. And last but certainly not least is the senior correspondent for CRM Playas and numerous other shows that he blankets the airwaves with. But he's gracing us with his presence, and that's the amazing. What's your name? Brent Leary.
I'm so amazing that you forgot
Yeah, my best friend.
Steve, just read it off the screen. It's in the lower third.
Well, actually, it's not. I'm on the gallery view, so it's not there.
I don't think I'm the senior member of Serum Players either, because Paul Greenberg is, slightly older than me.
No, I'm talking about it like, senior correspondent at the White House. That has nothing to do with age.
Yeah, I was trying to go down to see the signing of the new bill in Florida, but I'm not a member of Fox and Friends, so I wasn't able to watch that.
And that's insane.
You were shut out, huh?
I was shut out.
So what
Go on.
is that? What you want to talk about, or that you're interested in, or
That, I also think we need to spend some time discussing the brand new, shiny new communication vehicle that the Trump folks rolled out. It's called a blog, and I think it's important to talk about that too.
Keith, what do you think about the prospects for this blogging thing? You think that's going to go anywhere?
Well, the man's a great writer. He's got a wonderful.
He's a great writer. He knows how to use exclamation points.
Trying to get me to go to the dark side. I saw your ruse immediately.
Which one was that?
The dark side ruse. It's
Of
well
what?
known. By the way, just for Brent, Steve was borrowing the Comedy Central, do you remember? And now we're going to go over to our senior black correspondent.
Yes, or colored, we can use that as well.
Yeah.
No.
When
this meme, which
when
of
news
course
breaks-
is completely manufactured by Brent, and there's
I just thought I
videotape
heard
to
it.
prove
I
that
admit
you
it.
did not. You did not.
I misheard. I'm
You
sorry.
did not
I misheard.
think you heard it. That is a misspoke.
I misspoke and misheard.
Okay.
And any other miss you might be, we'll stay at just misheard, misspoke.
yeah, I don't get into Miss Universe, whatever you do.
No, we're gonna leave that out there.
Whoa. Okay.
Misunderstood.
All right, Frank,
I'm okay with
you are unleashed officially.
Well, now,
Yeah.
now, what that whole private screening for Fox in Florida, it didn't just piss me off that they just gave it to Fox. Look, you want a national platform, that's what you do. But the slap in the face of the people who live in Florida that depend on the local news there. I mean, the argument that they were going to get, by virtue of the fact that they were going live on Fox, they would get virtually all the local coverage that they needed, is a lie. It doesn't work that way.
I'm not sure that's true. I mean, don't you think that Fox carrying something in Florida is a pretty good way of getting to a lot of people?
That's not
Yeah,
the
but not-
discussion.
I think there's no news station that didn't pick up the Fox feed. They didn't show it live, but
That's
they
what I
showed it
mean.
within the hour. So
Yes, they did, and that's something that everyone would do, is to show it from tape. The fact is that that's the kind of event that one crew would pull, and then be allowed to go on live. It just bothered me. It smelled.
So
Yes, it's smelled.
you're saying basically that their refusal to allow a pool camera was the problem.
No, I don't think that's a result of the problem. The problem is that they made a deal like that.
Yeah, it lacks transparency at some level. It's the people's news, the people's right to see how their government operates. Even if you say you're still giving it out, you're just giving it to Fox. That's a fundamental violation of the people's right, people's First Amendment rights.
Well, I disagree that it's a violation of the First Amendment right. I don't think you have a right to see everything live. There is no concealment. It was all released. The bill is released. The issue is that putting it on Fox is actually a way of expressing what it's all about. It's all about restricting the vote. It's all about keeping only the people who watch Fox able to elect the representatives in Florida. So it's all of a piece. It's an example of what they're doing.
Michael, I don't even think it really is about restricting the vote, because the actual policies, Florida has kind of the most open voting in the whole of the US, even after this, in terms of the rights to vote. There's like 14 days early voting in Miami-Dade. There's 10 days everywhere else. So it's more of a PR stroke psychological war on the election was stolen without actually doing anything real. They're not actually doing anything real. It's much more feeding the frenzy about the election having been stolen. And it's closer to the culture war kind of approach than it is to real policy.
Well, I agree, except that real politics now is the culture war.
Yeah. I think to go to what Dennis was saying, I mean, look, even if you take it as a full-on PR stunt that fits into the whole zeitgeist of what the big lie is, what the big lie is all about. If you put those together, it makes perfect sense that it goes to Fox, that it's, and that Fox probably pays for it, a licensing fee or whatever, and it becomes a part of that whole sort of Megillah of an ideology. On the other hand, it's just horrible.
Well, it is horrible, but the horrible thing is the bigger picture that Dennis brought up. The entire Republican Party is collapsing into the big lie. It's all about claiming that voting is illegitimate, that voting is beside the point, that the election was stolen, an election that anyone objectively would see is the fairest and cleanest election we've ever had. They will not get over the fact that it's the big lie.
That'll take you right to Liz Cheney.
Okay, but before
that's why I said this is all one thing. I kept a paper.
Let's not conflate this quite yet.
But I kept
when
a
you
paper.
say Michael, when you say that something about how this is collapsing, what part of the Republican Party collapsing is a bad thing?
I'm not sure that the party is collapsing. The party's ideology is collapsing. There's something going on.
What part of that is bad?
Well, wait. Let me tell you. There are two paths here. One, which I think is the more likely path, is that the party itself will collapse. But the fact is that the Republicans are not homogeneously, evenly distributed across the country. They are in pockets where they can control things. And the structure of the U.S. Constitution and the distribution of people across states is such that there are pockets where the minority has enough power to stymie the majority. And what the Republicans are doing is continuing to concentrate their control so that they have, with a minority, the maximum leverage that they can. That's the issue. I mean, in the big picture, I think it's all going away. If you look at everything that Biden and his team are trying to do, it's remarkable. And I think in the long run, it's going to work out well for the Democrats at the polls. But what's happening in the Republican Party is that it's all turning into a black hole. It's about to, it may disappear down its own black hole, but the gravitational forces are all pulling towards Trumpism.
Okay, this is where, in my mind, it goes into the whole Cheney discussion.
That's right. That's why I say they're all related.
So go ahead, Frank. You were bringing it up. No, you're muting.
Yeah, there's some noise. I'm going to go try and kill it. Go ahead. Actually, if Michael, would you take it while I go and try and kill some background noise?
Oh, okay. The fact that the leadership in the House of Representatives cannot tolerate Liz Cheney is just an example of the fact that everything is being gravitationally pulled in to Trump and Trumpism, because I think that the calculation on the part of the Republican Party is that Trump has the voters in his pocket and they can't get the voters without Trump. So everything that they do has to revolve around Trump. Are you ready, Frank?
You're still muted.
Muted again.
I'm sure that you said exactly what I would have said.
Okay.
You brought it
no,
up first, Frank.
I did, but I think that the linkage to the bigger picture is sort of the key to the whole conversation. I agree with that, Michael, because there's so many crazy interconnecting synapses that seem to be firing all the time that you might have thought this time after the 6th that the idea of Trump and what Trump means to that party and the fact that he's still out there even without the social media help, and we're still talking about him, and all of this stuff surrounds stuff that he is in charge of. It boggles my mind. It really does.
It boggles mine too. I've saved a copy of the New York Times print edition from early February, where the headline was 77 days of Trump trying to overturn the election. And they put that headline up as though it was over. But he's still trying to overturn the election, and the party has jumped on with him. It's just astonishing that at this point, all the Republicans have to do is to try and overturn the election.
Does anybody think that the results that Arizona is going to come up with anything but something that'll look good for Trump? It's got to. It's just so stupid.
It is stupid, and it has.
So again, I think we're in mind boggle territory as opposed to like, what do we actually think about the net result of all this noise? Is it going to be good for? Let's not kick it up to democracy, but is it going to be good for the Democrats? What's happening here?
Maybe.
I personally doubt that. I think that I would characterize this process as being closer to a purge than anything else. It's basically what parties do when they're deciding who they're going to be. So they've made their decision who they're going to be. They're going after Biden for being, the phrase I heard this week is Biden won the election, but Bernie Sanders won the argument. They're going to go after him for being socialist, for flagrantly spending money. They're going to try to gerrymander, which I think is way more important than filibuster in terms of the future. They're going to get rid of any internal dissenters. And the reason they're doing all that is because, not because of Trump, but because of the Trump base. Trump is just a symbol. The base actually believes this stuff and is rabid. So what we're going to get is a radical, disruptive Republican Party that is more right-wing than we've previously seen, and stitching up election boundaries so they can win in places where they shouldn't.
Okay, so Dennis, can you the counter argument?
Well, I don't know if I want to be counter just because I'm next, but I see this as fundamentally good for the Democrats. I think I think Keith's right that parties purge, but parties don't win unless they grow or gerrymander and suppress votes. And there's a limit. There's a limit to how much of that's going to happen. The historical parallel I see is the terror after the French Revolution, where a relatively small group of French radicals came to control all the government. It didn't mean people were behind them. It just meant that they had the power, and it took another revolution to straighten things out. The key determinant in all of this for the United States is going to be whether or not the Republicans can gain power. As long as they don't have power, they can be they can wear all the tinfoil hats they want and be crazy. If at the same time Joe Biden and the Democrats are able to pass some meaningful legislation, it's going to make it harder and harder for the Republican base to hold together.
Brent, break the tie here. I mean, what do you think is going to happen? Do you think this is bad for the Democrats or bad for everybody?
Well, it's definitely bad for everybody in the big scheme of things. I mean, does this feel like there's anybody winning this at this point? I mean, this feels like the fact that we're still talking about what happened in November and I guess what's happened in January 6th. It just feels like a lose-lose to me. And I don't know if we'll see if anybody wins. I guess we have to wait till 2022 because, traditionally, what is it? The party that has the presidency loses seats in the House. And, if that happens, then, I mean, so much for Nancy Pelosi being the Speaker of the House.
There goes Georgia.
Yeah, there's Kevin McCarthy. There's your guy. Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy. How frightening is that? But yeah, I can't tell because this company, the country, the way it's the population is distributed, it's like the folks on the coast, they can yell and do all sorts of stuff, but because there's so many people in these, throughout the country in these Midwestern states that I don't see any big change in the way they vote, unless it's skewing more towards, where they were skewing towards before this. I don't know. Georgia's a weird state too, when you think about it. It's like, yeah, he lost the presidency, he lost the 2 Senate races, but they were like by the skin of the teeth. And I don't know if that's a trend or if that was just some kind of weird happenstance. We won't know anything until really 2022 at the earliest.
I'll give you an important tell. I'll give you an important tell. On MSNBC at lunch here on the East Coast, there was an interview with Shelley Moore Capito, the other senator from West Virginia. She's a real Republican. And she basically said that the infrastructure bill is not dead and that the Republicans are negotiating and they'll probably come up with a bigger package as long as it's focused more on traditional concrete and steel. That said, if that happens, regardless of the size of the bill, that's going to put a lot of Trump voters to work, and they know who's paying their salary. what Biden is doing right now and the Democrats are doing right now and can get done before the 22 elections is incrementally improve the lives of a lot of small voter groups that add up to a majority. And watch the infrastructure bill. I think you get an infrastructure bill, I don't care how small it is, the Democrats are going to have some running room.
I think without the infrastructure bill, it's a two-way street. So without the infrastructure bill, the infrastructure bill is going to be the thing that'll put it over the top. The two-way street being, I think that the way things are going, the national election is helped and the local elections are hurt. And if the infrastructure bill does happen, then the second half of that part goes towards the Democrats. So in the big picture, I think this all helps the Democrats.
I agree with Brent that 2022 is going to be the telling point. There's a lot of reasons for things that Dennis has said to think that the Democrats will pull it off because they are responsible for improving people's lives. So much so that there are a number of Republicans who are now telling their constituencies that help is on the way because of some of the things that were done as part of the rescue plan. They're taking credit for the bill that they voted against. That may happen as well in an infrastructure bill. Republicans will try and take credit for any improvement and say, look what we've done for you. And it's going to be up to the Democratic communications efforts to say, no, these people voted against everything that you think you got from them.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Well, I thought the messaging yesterday from Joe Manchin was fascinating, and it's in line with what you all are sort of converging on. Basically, what he said. Well, first of all, McConnell said what many people think was a tactical error on his part, saying that he's going to do that what they're doing is doing everything they can to stop Biden.
100%.
Right.
Which
recalls the whole situation with Obama and actually brings up some parallels that are not necessarily to McConnell's advantage. Like one of the things that he said about for Obama is we're going to do everything we can to stop an Obama second term. Well, that didn't work out well. There was a second term.
Yes, I think we're going to find out that one of Obama's greatest accomplishments was to train a whole generation of Democrats on how to deal with Republicans, which is basically don't try. And you see that in the Biden administration. They have all learned from Obama's going down that rat hole of trying to negotiate with the GOP.
So the thing that Manchin then pivoted on was, well, I don't know what McConnell's talking about, because I see a lot of compromise that's underway, bipartisan discussions referencing what his colleague on the Republican side that you referenced earlier. So he's basically saying, actually, McConnell, this is more fluid than you are acknowledging. And then at the end of the sentence, he basically says, and if this doesn't work, and essentially McConnell is successful at stopping all of this, then they'll have another meeting. And the implication of that is that they move the infrastructure bill to reconciliation, which doesn't require Republicans, if they can get people like Joe Manchin to vote for Democrat issues. So, there's this, I don't think this is going to wait until 22. I think this is happening in the next 3 weeks.
That'd be interesting. Did anybody see the article in the Times about there's a bridge between Kentucky and Ohio over the Ohio River that is, I think it's like Brent Stewart Bridge or something. It was named after some congressman. It's almost 60 years old, and it's decrepit. and it is the number 2 choke point in the American highway system. The number 1 being Fort Lee, New Jersey. It needs to be rebuilt. It needs new interchanges and a whole bunch of stuff. Mitch McConnell is against it for his own home state. And the home state is going crazy about it because they've been going crazy about it for about 20 years, wanting to get this bridge built. Now, if there's 10 of these suckers, there's Fort Lee, there's this bridge in Ohio, there's got to be 8 more in the country that are most likely named in the infrastructure bill. And a lot of those structures live in Republican districts. This ought to be a no-brainer.
There's a lot that ought to be a no-brainer going on these days.
Okay, let's give us another example, Frank.
Well, just the fact that the big lie is living is another example.
Why do you think that the big lie is living? I'm not sure I agree with that.
You don't think that there's a big part of the base that's proliferating the message of the big lie?
Yeah, and they're at 46.9 and falling.
Well, but see, now that's, to me, that's the interesting thing here, and that's sort of the demographics and the numbers, and it sort of feels like we're putting the base at an equal level on the playing field, and they're actually not in terms of totality. And it's just the way that their votes are distributed that has made them more powerful. But in terms of a group, it is starting to show some signs of weakness in terms of members of that group seeming to be moving more towards the center. And I don't know how many that would take to all of a sudden make that great base be a couple of million lower than it was this time 6 months ago. But I still think that it's, so the numbers there matter. But I still think that the fact that there is still a big number of people who will continue to proliferate that big lie, regardless of whether they believe it or not, by talking about it, the big lie continues to live. And I blame in part the press constantly referring to it. I thought when Trump decided to sort of change the brand of what the big lie was to make it work for him, I thought actually that was genius. Didn't really stick, but I thought it was a great try.
It was a good try. It wasn't, if it didn't stick, it wasn't genius.
No.
Is
Well,
anybody-
I thought it was hilarious.
Is anybody familiar
Hilarious,
with an old saying, the first time is tragedy, the second time's farce? I think we've had our tragedy. I think we're moving into farce.
That was
I
Karl
think
Marx,
the
by the way.
longer, pardon me?
It was
That was
Karl
Karl
Marx who
Marx.
said that.
I thought
Okay.
it was Groucho.
I was Harpo. Oh no,
All
Harpo
hail
was-
Marx and Lenin.
Honk.
I just
got one
couldn't
in.
resist Dennis
Yeah.
quoting Marx. That was a moment.
There it is. There it is. But the point being that Trump has had his opportunity, his tragedy. The longer this big lie goes on, the more people discredit it, the more farcical it becomes. I mean, has anybody seen Donald Trump crashing a wedding at Mar-a-Lago to give a 2-minute Trump speech?
Absolutely hilarious. He looks like he's going to fall over too. It's so,
Well, we wish him good health. Just,
yeah,
that's about it.
good health.
Farce. It's farce.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think that both Steve and Brent were right. We will get a lot of things settled before 2022, but it's going to take the congressional election and the senatorial election of 2022 to let us know whether the Republican position has weakened, or whether and if it does, then Trump is over. If they do maintain control of as much as they hope to, then Trump persists.
All right. So
We have two different boundaries to look at.
Well, but
Yeah,
I have a question I'd like to ask before we move off of this topic. Does anyone think that it's even possible that the committee that has to vote Liz Cheney in or out might in a closed vote keep her in?
no.
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 I
Republicans don't do that.
Well, no, they did it once before.
They did it in a closed vote, but they won't have a
Yeah.
closed vote.
This is not a closed vote. I don't know.
This-
Okay.
No, it'll be a closed vote, but she doesn't have the votes anymore.
and she doesn't want to stay in at
Yeah.
this point. She's playing a long game.
Yeah, well, that was what
Well,
I was
boy,
going to
she-
ask as a way of getting out of the topic, was to ask the question that what is it? What is she doing? What's in it for her? What's
She
her
goes
plan?
and she gets paid a whole bunch of money to go to CNN or MSNBC as
I don't
the
see her going to MSNBC.
No, well,
yeah
wait,
or
she
even
loses-
Fox.
They're not going to kick her out of Congress. She's going to lose her position as in the leadership. She'll
Yeah.
still be in Congress, and she'll be raising a huge amount of money because there is still an anti-Trump faction within the Republican Party, and she becomes the leader.
But
And how does
You
she
know what
manifest that? How
I
does
think
she
it's
manifest that as the leader? What does she do? Go on, start a blog?
I don't know how much communication she needs to do. She is mainly going to be raising money and putting together a faction. Look, she had an op-ed this week when she laid her position out. She will get as much TV exposure as she wants.
It's
If she
it's
wants to speak,
fascinating.
nobody's going to. Everybody's going to. Every booker is going to open up and
Yeah.
bring her onto the show, so she can say as much or as little as she cares to.
It's fascinating that the left has decided that she's good news. It's especially if you look at her voting record. She is a Republican who has been embraced by the Democrats.
Not
I don't know about that. I've been toying in my mind with the old game theory idea that my enemy's enemy is my friend.
Mhm.
But if you look at what she's done before this blow up with Trump, she is such an enemy that coming out to support the truth, which is basically all she's doing, I don't think is enough to move the scale for Democrats to do anything to lift a finger to help her. I mean, at most you can thank her for the self-sacrifice and watch her crash and burn.
I'm with you, Dennis. I think the Republican Party knows where it's headed, and she isn't part of it. And the right way to look at this for me is in the context of the next 20 to 30 years, not the next two elections. It's what is the Republican Party becoming, and why do we care? And to me, there's two key things that are going to determine the outcome. The first is the American economy. If the American economy prospers, backed by government spending in the short term, but not backed by government spending long term, that it actually can reinvest and remodernize, then I think working class voters that were pro-Trump peel away and everything is fine. On the other hand, if the economy sucks and taxes go up, then it's all in play.
Well, Biden is being very careful about whose taxes are going up and whose taxes are not going up. So it's not all in play.
No, I'm not talking about what's happening now. I mean, I don't think Biden's act is his last act. It's his first act. So if, by the way, I'm pro-tax. So just to be clear, I'm not arguing against taxes going up.
Okay, well, you can pay mine then if you're.
I just had to pay
Are you
mine.
offering, Keith?
I'm all wiped out now, having paid
Is this
mine.
Dogecoin? Is that?
One day you will be able to pay your tax in Dogecoin, and that'll be a fine day.
Dog-e coin.
Doggy coin.
That's correct. Okay, that's my cue to you, and I do want you have the floor, Keith, to talk about the reemergence or emergence or whatever the hell it is of blockchain and crypto, but I want to hear it punctuated with some, on the other hand.
It's going to be hard, but I'll try. So
Take the soupy
firstly, some
sales. Take the
facts.
soupy sales line. On the other hand, 5 fingers.
Yeah. So
Wow.
just some news of the week that drives that assertion. The first is that Andreessen Horowitz is now raising a $1 billion crypto fund. That's its third fund. Its first one was about 200 million. Its second one was about, I think, about 6 to 8. I can't remember.
Can you speak up a little bit? Yeah, Keith.
Yeah. So Andreessen Horowitz has announced it's putting another billion into crypto, and that's not its own money. That's coming from institutions like pension funds and endowments. So that is a vote of confidence, not from Andreessen, but from its backers, which makes it very significant. The second is Goldman Sachs opening a trading desk and doing its first trades for its high net worth customers in crypto. The third is that eBay is saying it's going to accept crypto payments for its 187 million buyers. The fourth is that it was announced that institutional managers now hold $14 billion of Ethereum, which, by the way, is currently trading at $3,500 and was under $200 about 6 months ago. And Ethereum's the real infrastructure underneath smart contracts and the use of blockchain to have rules-based outcomes. So it's kind of really important. And those are probably the big. Probably the last one I'll add, there's a bunch of others, but is that Sotheby's is now accepting Bitcoin in exchange for a Banksy, if you know who Banksy is, portrait. And Sotheby's is, very, very old, 276-year-old institution is now accepting Bitcoin. So this thing is becoming a normal part of financial transactions in the regular ecosystem. Now, the downside is really all about the dollar. There is a downside.
Let me just before you pretend to give us the downside. Dennis, you were shaking your head. Why?
I think what Keith has just described is the casinoization of Bitcoin. We've seen the stock market become a casino. 100 years ago, we saw the stock market really become a casino and completely lose its moorings, and it resulted in a 10-year depression and a world war. I don't know what's going to happen this time, but I don't have a great deal of confidence that any kind of cryptocurrency backed by nothing other than elves mining Ethereum or whatever the heck it is going to do a whole lot more.
In England, you can combine those two words. It's effing heck.
Well, in England, there's at least one word that we would never use here in America.
What, bloody? No.
No.
Effing, isn't that where there's an elite boys school?
No, he's taken us down a blind alley beginning with the letter C, I think.
There you go.
Crypto is the word.
Crypto, absolutely. That's a dirty word on that. Dennis and I feel
saved by the Markman bell.
No pun intended
very
on the
good.
blind alley either.
Okay, so
I just needed to get that off my chest.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. That's why I asked you. Can I recede the floor to Keith for his what is the
downside?
For his curtsy toward something that he doesn't think will happen.
Well, I think there's a lot of things happening at the same time, and disentangling them is hard. So anything negative one could say about blockchain, like the casinoization, has a lot of truth in it. There's no doubt about that. At the same time, there's something real happening, and then they're kind of both happening at the same time. And the real issue is, what's the long-term outcome? And the options are crash and burn or financial transformation. The smart money is on financial transformation, which roughly comes down to getting rid of the middlemen in all financial transactions, and allowing the buyer to pay the seller without having to trust someone to take the money and then pass it on. And I think that is going to happen. It is happening already, and it's going to happen more and more. Revolut, the upstart bank, this week announced, like Square, it always let you buy Bitcoin. Now it's going to let you withdraw it and put it into a wallet that isn't held by them. So bit by bit, it's becoming something that exists. You know, you have so many dollars, so many Ethereum, so many Bitcoin in a wallet, and you can move money between them and into stocks and shares, by the way. They're just different asset classes that you can put your value into.
So let me ask you this. Your newsletter, you produce it on Thursdays, right? Usually?
Yeah, I publish it on Fridays, but it's ready on Thursday.
Yeah. So what kind of story would it take that comes across your newsletter desk that would indicate a trend that would disrupt the rosy scenario that you're painting?
I think the main thing would be a better blockchain or a better way of doing this. In other words, it wouldn't be that this is invalid, because there's lots of negative examples. You can look at crime, money laundering. There's so many bad things you could say, but they don't really trump the good things. So I'd say it would be some genius, you know, the Mark Zuckerberg equivalent, who comes up with a better way of doing this even than the current ways, which I think is very likely, by the way.
You know, they're on the Roadcaster Pro that we're using to venture into the other unsubstantiated world called Clubhouse, has a crickets button. Yeah, and as I've said previously, I'm not afraid of somebody. I think Dennis left.
Because you said Clubhouse.
Oh,
Me and Dennis took off.
I thought that was NFT.
I went in sympathy with Brent.
So,
Well, you know,
Keith,
all you're
is it-
doing is encouraging me to talk about that thing. We did one yesterday for the first time, you know, and I was pleasantly surprised at how well it went. Keith was on the call. Brent joined it for a minute, but you know, owing to his incredibly busy broadcast schedule, he had to leave.
Yeah, that was it.
Okay, so I think Clubhouse is like, if you guys want to be afraid of the big lie, I think you should also be afraid that Clubhouse is going to stick around, because I think it is.
Not afraid of that.
I don't you think that it's probably going to be Clubhouse because they were first and the best, but there's so many out there competing for that space right now. I guess one doesn't know who's going to come out on top when it comes to that. Probably Clubhouse, only because they were the originator. But
other platforms are putting audio chat rooms as a feature of their product. Yeah, I mean, you can already see that on Twitter.
yeah,
But I think that Clubhouse has really been very thoughtful in developing their audience, their creators, and their platform and their UI. So so far, Clubhouse is still far and away, I think, the best.
Oh, it's easy to use. They have a great user experience, and the quality of the audio is so good, and it really is the best. There's no doubt about that. I'm just suggesting that that space is what is going to be the recipient of all of our largesse going forward, I think.
The problem with all these platforms is that they all attract bad actors and charlatans. And
Well, that's one of the problems, but it's not the problem. The problem is wondering what is the ultimate impact of this? Why would people spend time in this environment in a significant way moving forward?
Well, we already know that they do.
Now, the data
Don't-
is mixed. There's, there's a big drop off in terms of downloads.
Now there is, yeah.
Yeah.
It started recently, didn't it?
Yeah, about, a week after it was trending.
But I think that's by design, Steve. No one said this, but my belief is they massively ramped up their onboarding for about 2 months. So they got some huge numbers. And the numbers included lots and lots of highly followed influencers in various different segments and global. And now they're consolidating and they're leveraging alerts and notifications in particular. They're very good at that.
Mm-hmm.
And they're moving from the early adopter core to getting it ready for the next wave, which is, the middle adopters, which is a much bigger number of people. So I don't think this decline in downloads represents.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the logic of a much bigger number of people. I don't know if that's right.
The audience is what I'm referring to. I think the audience is going to grow, not the creators much, but the audience. They've got.
I think that they're tapped out in terms of their current model. I think they've got these big, gets of, Zuckerberg, et cetera, Elon Musk. And I think that mainstream media is already trying to absorb that by putting Elon Musk on Saturday Night Live, et cetera. So I don't think they've got a lot of upside there, except as a sort of marketing tool.
Mhm.
In the middle, where I think you're suggesting there's going to be growth, they have to come up with some kind of product or content or experience that's going to attract people who have no way of knowing where it is. So
Well,
I think that's a big hurdle for them. Go ahead.
The other thing you got to keep in mind is that we live in an attention economy, and throwing another bit of social media in is a zero-sum game. If you're going to get people onto Clubhouse, it probably means they're going to be not doing something else. And there's only 24 hours in a day. There's only so much.
I totally agree with that. I think that it's going to kill podcasting until the podcast platforms absorb these functionalities, and that's not going to happen quickly.
Well,
But
I think
people don't
podcasting-
have time. People don't have
Podcasting-
time for. I was talking to Francine Hardaway yesterday, and I asked her because she's a big fan of podcasting. I asked her how many does she listen to a week. I think she said something like 14 or 15 a week. Now, how does she go? Where does the bandwidth come from to get into a 4-hour Clubhouse conversation? It's going to come from, there's going to be 10 or 11 podcasts that she can listen to. It's totally a zero-sum game.
Yeah, but don't forget, podcasting serves a slightly different market. You go into Clubhouse not knowing what really is going to be talked about or said, but you go into a podcast with a pretty good idea of who's talking, at least, and some of the things, they're teasers. They'll tease some of the things they're going to talk about, and most often the podcast is already in the can. It's not live, so those are some important differences. And I still agree that it is a zero-sum game, but it doesn't mean one's going to become supreme. I think you're going to have a lot of walking wounded in social media. You're going to have a lot of companies that are doing, yeah, okay, they're not killing it anymore.
We still have yet to see how the business model for Clubhouse pays out. Right
Well,
now,
podcasting too. Social media in general. Where's the business model?
Well, for the bigger podcasts, it's an advertising play. They have sponsorships, and the podcasters all read ads from their sponsors.
What's the difference between a big podcast and a network show on linear television?
The only difference is that it's on demand.
But all those shows are on demand now.
Yes, they are.
Okay.
So, but there are times for you want an audio experience rather than a visual experience. It gets muddy because most of the big podcasts also put up a camera while they're recording, so they're available as videos as well as audio streams. But
Well, and by the way, the big networks also have huge money to market, to target things that they choose.
You know, in the news space, all of the news shows are available as podcasts. So it's a very muddy world.
My observation of watching the people who, my wife listens to a lot of podcasts, mainly Kara Swisher and Matt Taibbi are the two big ones she listens to, but also some of the PBS ones. And, you know, my observation is what I'm seeing is some of those people are migrating either to Clubhouse or Twitter Spaces, and some of them are recording what they do on Clubhouse and then publishing as a podcast. So what they're moving to is the model we've had on the gang forever, which is this is a live recording. It's live. People can watch. On Clubhouse, people can watch and participate, but then you record it and it's available on demand afterwards as well. So that it's unlikely somebody's going to do there's going to be more and more of a trend away from a pre-recorded podcast to a live one that then is available on demand afterwards, I think.
Well, I don't know. So if it's migration so much as metastasizing, because they're not leaving their podcasts.
Oh.
It's turning out we're going to be in a world where everything is available on every medium and every platform. And I just don't know what that means.
Well, that can't last. That can't last. I mean, commercial life.
Yeah, this radio thing is going to go
differentiated.
away for sure. This, you know, who listens to radio anymore? It's
Isn't that what a podcast is? Isn't that what a podcast is? It's really going to be about.
That's my point. It's not going away.
It's the way you find these things that is going to be the big differentiator in the future. It's about the way that you discover something worth your attention. And it's about being able to navigate to that thing that you've discovered that's worth your attention. So that to me seems like the next natural step in the evolution of.
Steve knows the answer to that one. It's notifications.
Well, I do think we've already said. Well, I think Keith has already said that their Clubhouse's use of alerts and notifications is very sophisticated. Right now it's their differentiator, and they're very close to. I don't know if they're going to do this or not, but they're very close to being able to roll that up in a social cloud, somewhat like the Twitter social cloud, which is going to be very valuable. So they're going to stick around there, but they have, in terms of what Frank is talking about in terms of discovery, that is, it's more of a relationship that is going to carry that day. People are going to basically sign up for the next show, not the current show.
Well, it's a combination of that and algorithms. You know, every social media has adopted people who like this, also like that, various kinds of social algorithms that make recommendations. So, it's a combination of people browsing and surfing and people being nudged and having their sleeves tugged.
Well, there's no doubt that that people are going to go to the things that they like by nature, and that the algorithms will point them towards things that are similar to those things that they like. But discovering something new That I don't know how you do that. You know, and what is the user experience? Is it something in the 3D world? Is it something that's voice actuated? What are the questions that you ask it in order to achieve whatever it is you're trying to achieve? I just think that there's so much more out there that needs to be dealt with in order to make this whatever this next step is, that we're not there yet. And AI isn't necessarily the answer.
Well, one of the oldest methods will continue to persist, and that's simply word of mouth, old-fashioned friends telling friends. Hey, have you seen this? Have you heard that? I mean,
It's funny too, because those people will be telling their friends on Clubhouse.
I think Clubhouse ends up being a lot more than audience listener. It feels to me as if it could replace conference calls. It could replace any group conversation for inside businesses or between businesses, because it has a closed concept. It feels like it could become a ubiquitous audio platform that replaces telephony, phone calls, conference calls,
and
business
Zoom
calls.
Wow, that's thinking big. That plays, that tracks. I understand. I grok that.
Brent, what's your thought, other than intense hostility toward even talking about it?
I thought it's a beautiful sunny day out there. I'm looking right out the window. It's really nice. I'm 2 weeks into my second vaccination. I can actually go outside now and feel pretty good about this.
He's buying thinking time, Steve.
But
Buying thinking
no,
time.
no, all right. No. All honesty, sometimes even thinking and talking about this stuff gets a bit exhausting. Do we feel like this is where my exhaustion comes in? I was watching MSNBC the other day. I don't know whatever his show was. I don't know. But at the end of the show, all right, so they've been on for like 2 or 3 hours. At the end of the show, they go, and we're going to do a special Clubhouse on. I mean, damn, we just had our 3 hours of our attention. Do you need to do this? I mean, you already are on cable TV. You know, do you got other stuff? You got video streaming on Peacock. Do you need to be on Clubhouse? Do we really need to have more of you at this point? I think we're, just because these channels are there, do we each have to have something for every channel? I mean, it's kind of like, if I can get a piece of your attention, I'm good. I don't need to try to get all of it. I don't need to try to follow you over to every channel. And it just feels like a lot of this stuff is exactly, it's just exhausting trying to deal with everybody who's trying to be on every channel almost at every minute of the day. Are they afraid that if they're not there, that attention that you're not giving them is going to lead to, a train wreck or a jailbreak, that you'll never come back to the normal thing that they usually do? It just feels like there's just too much of this stuff going on here. I mean, and who am I to say it? Because I'm live streaming almost every damn day.
Brent, stop the train. I want to get
they
off.
have to sell car insurance. That's it.
It seems to me that here's an issue that I take with Clubhouse, for example, and that is that I want to interact with some of these people that I've gravitated towards in the platform, but can't. I don't, unless I actually happen to know them, and I raise my hand and get picked on because somebody recognizes me. There's no way right now to sort of approve someone's question. Somebody might baba booey the whole thing, and all of a sudden it's bad. But it just seems to me that a lot of, what a win would it be if you had the chance to get online and speak to, I don't know, somebody that you care about, somebody in the tech world, some entertainer, something like that has these that are hosting these, somebody that's really smart in a specific area, Dennis. But
the people
you can't
who
do
attract, people who attract lots of folks who want to get in touch with them have to filter it somehow. I
Yeah.
mean, there's no way to solve that problem. It's like the old talk radio phone-in shows. Everybody who wants to call in doesn't get to speak to whoever's on the air.
But you did have somebody
I don't know
on
how
those
you
shows.
change that.
You had that person. What was her name on Roz? You had that person that answered those calls before it got to.
You had a
DJ.
screener, but you also had a
Yeah.
lot of people who were just hanging out there, letting the phone ring because the screener couldn't get to them.
Right.
Now,
Anyway,
the other day when I was yesterday, I guess it was, I had some of the same concerns that you're expressing, Frank. Instead, we just opened up everybody who showed up, which was not a lot of people, but you know, some people showed up, and we just turned on everybody on. And what I discovered, at least in this short experiment, was if they were just rubbernecking, you know, if they didn't have anything to say, they didn't say anything.
Right.
So, you know, the Baba Booey fear, I think that is more attractive or more possible with a large audience than it is with a smaller one.
And who's to say which of this is it? There's a reason to have a small audience and a reason to have a large audience, and other people have their own reasons for wanting to have one or the other. Not just an advertiser that looks at a rating and determines what the cost per thousand is, and then somebody gets paid for it. Some people aren't in the platform for that.
Do you think that Clubhouse can become a word like Google or Zoom, as in when everyone's on it? Let's just assume eventually anyone on the internet can be on Clubhouse. The use cases are just going to explode, right?
Well, I think you're right. I think that's exactly what you were saying earlier. That would be the end of that, and that is that it becomes like Kleenex. You know, it's a word that transcends the usage. And if a company like Clubhouse becomes all of those things that you suggest, sort of the new Zoom, the new telephony, you know, that it becomes a bigger play, that would require them to start, you know, offering these things out as services that they do. And actually probably pretty quickly, because the 8 or 9 people that are listening to us right now are probably getting all their Bitcoin together to go and do that.
What about, I mean, the next election should be a Clubhouse election. Liz Cheney should be using it right now to organize.
For what purpose? For what purpose? What is she running for?
Well,
she's not running for president.
She's trying to win as big a chunk of the Republican base as she possibly can.
No, I think she's just trying to put a marker down for after the big lie gets so boring to so many people that the percentage of the so-called base drops below like 40%, at which point, who cares?
Well, then I'll give a different example, because I don't want it to be a Liz Cheney point, because I think it's more of a Clubhouse point. One of the guys that showed up when me and Steve were on was this guy from Manchester called Doug, I think. And Doug is a Manchester United fan. And this is the last 2 weeks, there's been this huge controversy about the ownership of the team. And he said, why couldn't we use Clubhouse to organize the fans, you know, to buy the club? So it's more to do with Clubhouse as potentially as an organizing platform for anything, a business goal, you know, a social goal, any goal.
I can see that the thing that I think most of the little unknown people, they want to use Clubhouse to grow an audience. You guys are talking about folks who already have an audience, and then they use Clubhouse to be able to speak to the audience they already have. That's 2 different things there. And I see, you know, people want to try to build an audience. You know, they want to be able to say, I've got so and so many people on Clubhouse, and then use that to try to pump them up. I see that more than I see, you know, the Liz Cheneys or the folks who are actually already on cable TV, who have a big platform of their own, or at least they have access to these big platforms, to then use Clubhouse to further integrate the people that they're already reaching with their 30-minute or 30-second time slot. Then they use Clubhouse to extend their opportunity to fully indoctrinate these folks. But what I see, the regular Joe Blow, they're trying to build an audience with that.
You know, one thing we haven't talked about, and we probably should, because it's the distaff side of this, is audience burnout, disillusionment, and walking away from social media entirely. I'm not saying that would happen in large numbers, but what would it take? What would it take to see the audience shrink?
I think it's happening right now.
Yeah, I think so too.
Frank, you're on mute.
Yes, it's happening right now, but it's actually, if you take a look at the aggregate, it's actually not happening. It's just people are going elsewhere. There's definite figures that show that there's a loss in one area and a gain in another area. It's just that there's such a disparate set of platforms out there that people are just going out there and getting into those. That's what the numbers are showing.
So that's the zero-sum theory.
Yeah, I don't think, honestly, I don't think that we as a society, the planet, is going to immediately walk away from the media. I don't think that there can be times where people get media fatigue or fatigue from viewer fatigue or content aggregation fatigue or newsletter fatigue or whatever. None of it's going away.
Well, then let me offer one other idea. As we come out of the pandemic, people will have less time at home, less time in front of their screens, and maybe less interest in attending to all of the different platforms and shows or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, I think that's true. But remember that once they get in the car, they're right back in audio land. Prime time.
Yeah,
It'll be interesting to watch.
It is,
I think
the
the
point you
key-
do make, Dennis, you make a really good point though about the end of the working from home sort of lifestyle when people start to go back, even if it's only a year, if it's a year or two down the road, it doesn't matter. It plays into exactly what Steve's saying. Then the overall numbers will go down. It will look different than what it really is.
If you think of it as software eating the world, and you draw a little map of the world of audio, of everything that's audio, and you think of Clubhouse as the software that's going to eat it, I think that's as closest to the truth of what's going to happen. And anything that's audio today that doesn't end up on Clubhouse, I'll be shocked, because it's better. The voice, I mean, God, the codec, the voice, the fact that it's full duplex in real time, you can with no kind of latency. It is amazing, and so it's high quality, latency free, full duplex, controllable. You know who's got the mic, who hasn't got the mic. You can have audiences. Today it's up to about 10,000. I know from the work I'm doing in WebRTC, that number is going to go to millions. You'll be able to have audiences of millions. So
zero latency or next to zero latency?
Zero latency latency for the audience. In the interactive group will always be a subset of the audience, and they'll have no latency as well. You can't.
This reminds me of what's that guy's name who owns the basketball team?
Mark Cuban.
Mark Cuban.
Right. Mark Cuban about what was it?
Broadcast.com.
Yeah, I mean, we may be talking about the same thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
He was very insistent that there was no way that video was going to work on the internet. Basically, he said, no, it doesn't scale. Well, he was wrong.
Very wrong.
Yeah. So, when you say millions, yeah, but isn't that more an after effect of what the real value is and what's going on here? I mean, it just doesn't. I'm sure it's important to hop in and all of these different plays, but I don't understand why millions in a single room means that much. I mean, we already have that technology. It's called the major broadcast networks. The Super Bowl. We already know how to do this.
Yeah, except the regular people aren't going to get on the major television networks or aren't going to be a part of the Super Bowl. Yes, we do know how to do this, but it's the allowing anybody to be able to use it and to, even if it means
But
a
there,
dream.
What does that mean? It's just
there's
the
an illusion.
gatekeeper
There's an
argument?
illusion here. There are different purposes for getting on Clubhouse. Some people are there to talk. Some people are
Yeah.
there to have a conversation, and some people are there to listen. Some people are there to promote. Some people are there to explore. They're all there for different reasons. And and typically in media, you have a very small number of people who are putting out the communication, and a much larger people who are sucking it in. That's not going to change. You can't have
No.
a million people talking. Most of the time, you want to sit back and listen. Sometimes you want to have something to say. Sometimes you want to talk back, but sometimes you want to be the deliverer of the message. And sometimes you want to have a conversation with people whose views you respect, as we're having now.
I was just going to say, it's exactly what we're doing now.
If you put what you just,
we invented this whole thing. I mean, 20 years ago. I mean,
X in the
seriously.
mail, Steve.
Yeah, exactly. And it reminds me of another contraction that I will not discuss.
I was going to say, Michael, if you put everything you just said into the part of your brain, or I do anyway, which is also where podcasts are. There's another part of my brain which is business calls, and another part of my brain which is webinars. They're all audio. I think they all go onto that platform ultimately because it's better.
Eventually they do, but think back to the old world where people went to business conferences. Sometimes there would be a session that was a panel discussion. Sometimes there would be someone giving a keynote. Sometimes they would throw it open to the audience for Q&A. I mean, it's the same dynamic whether you do it electronically or in a big room.
Yeah, and we're going to find out how many people want to get back into a big room anytime soon.
We should. You could take that poll right now. I'll tell you which one I'm going for.
Did you notice?
What I'm saying is that the human
Right
interaction, the communications impulse, the learning impulse, the conversation impulse is the same, whether you do it physically in a big meet space or whether you do it electronically over a digital network. You're still doing the same things.
Did you notice?
It's not. You don't get the same experience though with your face to face. We just did a whole thing on all these virtual events and how much most of them are not being done effectively because they're just basically trying to replicate the live experience and put a camera in front of it. It's not the same.
This is true. Well, this is the old rear view notion of all new media. When movies came along, they decided to try and photograph and replicate stage plays. And it took them almost a decade to figure out, no, this is a new medium. You can have close-ups, you can have cutting, you can have intercutting between two events, you can have all kinds of things that you can't do in a stage play. Same thing with radio, which tried to put vaudeville on radio. When television tried to put radio on television, eventually every medium finds out what it's good for.
Okay, so we've got a hard stop for Brent in a few minutes. So was there anything that you had wanted to talk about at the top of the show that hasn't been talked about yet? I know that there's the big Facebook crisis, but I doubt you're interested in that.
No, I thought you guys, that was the hot topic. And now it's only 6 more minutes to talk about that. That's a shame.
Well, for you.
Well, you guys can take it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think there's even 1 minute to talk about it, but that's just me.
I just
What-
want to subscribe. Did Trump come out with a newsletter yet? Because I'll definitely subscribe to that.
No, you won't. That's a alternate fact. Isn't it?
I think there's only one headline on the Facebook, which is, thanks for the hot potato. Here it is back.
Yeah, that's pretty much sums it up. Right?
I'm
See,
giving
I
you
thought-
another- I'm giving
I
you
thought
another
the
6
most-
months to figure this out.
I thought the most interesting part of the story, other than that, was the secondary feed that put out the content from the primary feed that also got shut down. I thought that was, to me, that was an interesting thing happening.
What?
there.
Oh, that was Twitter, not Facebook.
What?
There's a secondary group that was refeeding. So I guess it was refeeding it on Twitter. That's right. That was Twitter. They got shut down. But still, I thought that was a very interesting part of that story.
Yeah, someone opened an account that just reposted
Oh yeah.
what Trump was putting in his blog onto Twitter, and Twitter said, "No, you can't. No, he's off the platform.
Yeah.
This doesn't
Yeah.
work. Goodbye."
I don't know how I made that sound much more complicated than you just.
No, I just
I know.
You know-
it's
you
true.
were trying to get through a very, very small funnel, which is my brain.
You know what was, I think one of the most interesting things about the whole Facebook controversy isn't related to Trump. It's related to Zuckerberg. It basically lays bare the fact that Zuckerberg is the ultimate decision maker and he can't make a freaking decision.
Mm,
Whereas Jack Dorsey did.
yeah.
The other thing that I
Twice.
was reminded of, I kind of lost sight of it. Nick Clegg, a former, what was it, associate prime minister, assistant prime minister, deputy prime minister of England, is now working for Facebook, and it's in his lap to try and shepherd this through Zuckerberg's brain.
Well, it's right where it should be.
He also had the
I
job
thought
of,
that the advisory board or whatever it is that kicked it back to Zuckerberg, I thought that was a patriotic decision.
he was the leader of the British Liberal Party that was in coalition with David Cameron, and so they were both they were number one and number two, Cameron and then Clegg. And he had two jobs. One is to protect Cameron, and the second was to protect the Liberal Party, and he failed miserably at both. So we can't hold out too much hope that this will be his successful moment.
He sounds like Zuckerberg's guy.
He has a great voice.
Nick Clegg?
He really, and yeah, he's got a
A
great
radio voice?
and
Is that what you're
he's
saying?
got a radio, and he looks good too. He's like, this guy cannot make any mistakes. Well, oops.
Yeah, I happened to be in London when they had the first televised debates. When there was a three-way debate between the Lib Dems, the Labour Party, and the Conservatives, and Clegg really did very well on television. He was a great TV presenter.
Okay. Frank muted. Oh, your thumb is not muted, however. All right. Well, we're down to 30 seconds for Brent. So we'll see you again next time, Brent.
See you, folks.
Have a
It's
good
been
week.
fun.
Good
Had
weekend.
a run.
Thank
See
you.
ya.
Looking out of that window.
Chow
Yeah,
mein.
it's beautiful out there.
Poof. Okay. So have we killed off the Facebook controversy yet?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything to do but wait and see what Zuck does in 6 months.
Yeah.
I could make it more controversial by saying what I really think, which is that,
Well, talking to the mic if you're going to.
well, it's right here. So I'm,
Well,
mean,
it's
short of
better when
doing
you're
this.
talking to-
Well,
yeah,
that sounds good.
that's okay.
That sounded.
I'd just like to say that what they should have done is they should have reinstated him.
That's what Clubhouse sounds like, Keith.
Does anybody agree with that?
No, I don't.
I didn't hear a word he said. I was just
He
listening
said-
to the tone of
He
his
said
voice.
he thinks that the former guy should have been reinstated.
Would it matter?
What the?
I that's a different question. Probably
Yeah,
no.
no.
Would it
Here,
matter, or
Keith,
would it only accelerate the farsification of Donald Trump?
Well,
Look,
it would
it's a
have put
very
a
simple
lot.
answer.
It would put a
It's-
lot more money into Trump's coffers because
His
you have the
legal
platform
defense
for
fund, you-
fundraising.
Yeah, but I don't think we should treat social media rules as a tactic in the war against Trump. I think that it's too important what social media is to subvert it to win against Trump. I just rather social media, everyone had a voice, and then we win by being better.
Oh my God, that's such a great thing. That's so naive.
And I have to say, Trump's position is not completely silenced on Facebook.
Right.
No.
There is no cancel culture for Trumpism on Facebook.
But I don't think history will judge us well if we believe that banning Trump is right. We won't be judged well 10 years, 20 years from now. It's too much of a tactical approach, and it undermines all ethics when it comes to how debate should be conducted.
Well,
I totally
Keith, I think you're
disagree.
right,
That's-
but I also think that the whole approach is wrong. The whole approach that Facebook is taking is wrong, which is basically to try to add quality to a production of manufacturing line after the product's already been made. What you need to do is build quality in at every step, which means that you don't ban Trump. You start building an edifice that says, okay, if you want to be on Facebook, you have to be able to do these particular things. Maybe you need to get some kind of certification or licensure if you're planning on addressing the entire world, say beyond 5,000 of your closest friends.
But there are terms of service and community guidelines that are built into the product. What they said was, well, because he's the president and a world leader, we'll give him a pass and he can violate our terms of service. And eventually they said, no, he's violated them too far. He just sparked a violent insurrection against the U.S. Capitol. I think that violates our terms of service. It's not a. I don't think you are restricting discourse when you eliminate outright lying.
Good luck.
I think you're
good
wrong,
luck with
Keith.
that point of view.
Historically, history will look back at this moment and say, man, that guy was a jerk. They did the right thing. That is what history is going to look back and say about what Facebook does. I think that history is going to look back and say, boy, how stupid were they to get themselves in that mess? Thank God they dug them out. They dug themselves out of it. It probably is going to take a couple or 3 or 4 years, maybe 8 years. Somebody said today that it was probably going to be 2 administrations before things get back to normal. I don't think that was on our call, but it may have been earlier. I've completely lost my short-term memory. It's just, I think that it's 180 degrees the other direction, Keith. I think that they will look back on us and say they did the right thing.
I think that history never looks favorably on side A winning because side B's voice is closed down.
Well, I think you need to go back to the Schenck v. United States Supreme Court ruling of about 1920, written by Oliver Wendell Holmes, and reaffirmed in Brandenburg v. Ohio, in which Holmes, in the original ruling, came up with the construction clear and present danger. Free speech is not free if it presents a clear and present danger to society. And I think that's the thing that's missing from the whole social media discussion right now.
It's hard to legislate that, though, Dennis. I mean, practically speaking, a speech is never a clear and present danger. It's the actions that might follow it that are. So if you try to draw a straight line between a speech and a set of actions, it's incredibly difficult.
You mean like yelling fire?
Trump had nothing to do with January 6th. There was no connection between Trump's speech and the insurrection at the Capitol.
Well,
of course, it's very hard
Wait
to
a minute,
do.
listen, if you listen to the Republicans, there was no insurrection at the Capitol.
Were the speeches against King George criminal or in the eyes of the British, or was the revolution criminal in the eyes of the British? It was the
Both.
latter. So
Don't think,
what about
Oh, that's
McCarthyism?
history. History is
McCar-
written by the winners.
And what about
That's an invidious comparison.
That's correct. So let's do McCarthy on the other side. McCarthy clearly represented a clear and present danger to civil society by accusing everyone of being a communist and trying to take them to court and torturing them and blah, 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 blah. But he was never a criminal, right? He was never shut up. He was defeated because he was wrong.
That's not clear and present danger, though.
Well, yeah, it kind of is if you're an actor in Hollywood with left-wing aspirations.
It's not about the actor, it's about society.
Well, that is society.
What Holmes was talking about was shouting fire in a crowded theater. There are some things you just can't
that's different.
do.
No, I agree with that.
I mean, if it wasn't, if you know, the notion that we can't do anything about this was true, then we might as well not need driver's licenses. I mean,
you can do something,
so we need to do something.
but doing
And
something,
so far, the only one that I think has done something successfully has been Jack Dorsey.
driving a car in a point of view can't be compared. If you have rules around actions, you don't have rules around speech. You just don't.
Speech is an action.
Well, you can argue that, but I think you'd lose.
Well, so far that it's going the other way.
Well, only because you're going to hate me for saying this. I almost can't use this word with you, Steve, but I'm going to use it. The only reason is the majority currently supports canceling people who they disagree with, and that's wrong.
Well, I don't know what that means. To me, that's
I know.
a political argument. And what we're talking about here is if I say fire in a theater, the theater
one
has
said fire.
If
Even Trump.
oh,
didn't do
come
it.
on.
No.
Let's all go down to the Capitol and, you know, and because the election was
He's kidding.
stolen.
He doesn't mean it. He's kidding.
Right.
Look,
It's just
an
advertising.
no,
It's a
no,
marketing.
To the
campaign.
Capitol. I'll be there with you.
What I'm telling you is, if that was true, well, let's see if Trump gets prosecuted for that. If it was true, he's a criminal. I don't think they could win a case.
Didn't they just let him off of
That's not the point. That's not the point. That's not the point. We're talking about setting up a set of standards by which we can compare what's good and what's not good vis-a-vis speech on the internet. We're not talking about, Trump's still being investigated. It's too early to say anything about that. It's not true that we can't do nothing about it. The question is, what is the set of standards and rules that we're going to put in place that precede anybody's speech so that everybody knows up front what's fair game?
But so think of it this way. By the way,
there's not enough hard drive space to keep this going much longer. So go ahead.
I'll just say one little thing. Steve knows this, but most of you don't. From the end of my bachelor's degree through to being 40 years old, I was a political activist. I was an active Marxist, actually, and I ran a campaign called Workers Against Racism and another one called Hands Off Ireland. And I used to regularly give speeches and write strongly negative points of view about the British state. And with the following and an audience, including mass demonstrations, including getting arrested, supporting Argentina's right to the Malvinas.
And therefore,
And therefore, I fully don't want anybody to close down the right to dissent.
I understand that. You may not get your wish.
Well, I don't even think we're talking about the right to dissent.
Well,
But I don't want to keep going around in circles here.
No,
Frank has to jump. I'm going to jump.
Sorry. Yeah.
You
I'll
know,
shut up.
okay. Well, I'm not asking you to shut up. I'm telling you to shut up.
I know.
I have to leave.
You're saying nobody else is going to listen, right?
I want to blame you
Bye-bye.
though, Steve, because
Bye, Frank.
You
Bye.
said you wanted more controversy, so I offered some, but I didn't need to.
I don't recall saying that. Okay. I'd like to thank, there is no once around. We did it once around at the beginning. And this is what we got. Thanks to our producer and director, Tina Chase Gilmore.
Thank you. Thank you, Dennis.
Thanks
Deserve
to
it.
Frank, who has escaped. Thanks to Brent, who is probably doing yet another broadcast on his real-time There Goes Podcasting Network.
Think you'll complain about me?
All Brent all the time.
That's right. That's the only way that Clubhouse is going to work, is you just don't ever hang up. Right?
It's true, actually. There are people who live on Clubhouse.
Yes. And thanks to Michael Markman.
Thank you all.
Thanks to, I already said that. Thanks to Keith Tier.
You're welcome. I don't know if thanks are in order. I'm going to have to go to confession after this.
No, this,
Great show.
we get there every time.
Great show.
Even before it starts, we're there. Nothing's changed. Thanks to Dennis Pombriant.
And we didn't talk about those scalawags at AT&T Wireless, but I intend to.
Yeah, I know that's one for the newsletter, I think. Your newsletter on sustainability and batteries is terrific.
Ooh, did you see the we should have talked about the Amazon announcement that came out this morning about their new network for IoT network. It was kind of interesting.
Great show.
Well, we'll see.
Sidewalk.
If we don't hang up, then we can start talking about it now.
Sidewalk, it's called.
Okay. I guess that's it. Oh, please, we will put as a super in this space where you can go to volunteer or contribute for the India situation, and please join the Telegram network so that you can be notified of any developments in Keith's emotional history before the next show.
T.me/Gilmore Gang.
Thank you.
And our Twitter feed.
And our Twitter feed, it's at Gilmore Gang. 2 L's, no E, no 4 or ampersand. It's just
No you.
exactly. Oh,
No
that
Q. No Q either.
We'll put that super there too.
They can just look at your name here in Zoom, where it's right there, and add gang on the end.
Oh,
well, but you can't do anything with that. If you click on it, nothing happens. Correct?
You have to memorize it and retype it.
Oh, well,
Sounds like a lot of work.
that goes past what the base is interested in.
I'm actually not.
Thanks to
sure whether
everybody
those-
who showed up, and especially those who didn't. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
bye-bye.
Bye.
Keith, you're the only person here without